Hi, good afternoon. Great. Very excited to join you guys and well, share a little bit of our insights for this very exciting topic.
Please. Well, I am here in the background. If you need anything, I will pass the baton over to you.
Great. Let me just share my screen. There we go. Are you seeing it? Yes, perfect. Great. Well, then good afternoon to everyone and good evening to those joining over here in Europe or the UK. First of all, I would like to thank, of course, Power to Fly for giving me the opportunity to address this important webinar in the context of the Diversity Reboot series on creating inclusive LGBTQI spaces in the biotech industry. As a member of the LGBTQI community myself, a former scientist who understands the academic life and the challenges that it brings, I am currently working as an executive recruiter for private equity-backed biotech startups. And well, all of this makes it really interesting for me. I mean, this topic holds a lot of special effect in my heart. So before jumping into what's going to be some of the topics that I'll be going through today, I wanted to maybe share a little bit more on my intro. Let me just, I'm having some issues with, there we go. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit of the different sections that we'll be covering. First of all, the importance of creating safe environments for LGBTQI professionals, and I'll be sharing some general statistics on this. Then secondly, we'll go into the growth and the potential of the biotech industry, particularly in this current world following the COVID-19 pandemic. Then we'll address the challenges when identifying potential LGBTQ I+ hires, and finally some strategies for retaining LGBTQI+ talent. So let's dive into our first topic, which is, well, the importance of creating those safe environments. And I think that for address this, it's what's better, right, than share some few statistics that underline why this advocacy is so important. Not shockingly, LGBTQI individuals face higher rates of discrimination in the workplace compared to their non-LGBTQI+ counterparts. And this is, of course, something that it's not just for the biotech industry, but as a whole. Most importantly, when employees feel comfortable and safe, there's data showing that, well, the businesses that they are part of are much more productive. Very interestingly, I'm sharing there a book that I read a couple of months ago, The Economic Case for LGBTQ Equality. Again, I really recommend this book for anyone trying to share with solid data to their managers, to their bosses, or in the context of any company reorganization, because there's proof today that creating diverse, equal, and inclusive spaces, it's a human, a sensitive, and emotional benefit for the individual. Yeah, but also it directly impacts the productivity of the business and the success of that organization. Then something that, again, we can assume quite easily, the fact that companies that have diverse, equity, and inclusive standards in their workplaces, they experience higher employee satisfaction and higher employee retention rates. And here I'm bringing a second book that I recommend for anyone that wants to dive deeper into this specific aspect. You'll see there, it's called Better Allies, Everyday Actions to Create Inclusive, Engaging Workplaces. And I think that, of course, this is important to also highlight the role that allies would have in this process. We're talking here about a structural change. We're talking here about changing things that are not even mentioned in some workplaces. So it's not just an effort of members of the community, but definitely anyone that can resonate with our stories and our challenges. And finally, the fact that in the context of the biotech industry, that it's growing with much more job opportunities out there, professionals that are really highly qualified. Well, if they don't see these policies and these standards being implemented, they are going to be looking for another job. So for a business, it becomes now a priority to be able to really address these topics and create the kind of internal processes that are very much needed. So that's a little bit to put some context in why we're having this conversation today. Now, let's go to this second part, which is the growth and the potential of the biotech industry as a whole. Hunter was mentioning some numbers at the beginning. Of course, there's a lot of different models and estimations depending on the year, depending on the market. But as you can see, well, this is a Bloomberg report from 2021. As we mentioned before, the biotech market size is expected to reach 2.4 trillion by 2028. Here we're seeing larger number, 3.4 if we consider 2030. And just in the US, it's an industry that has employed 2.1 million individuals. And only, let's say, since 2018, the job growth in the sector has risen 11%. And if we think what has been the different drivers of this growth, well, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic was a huge driver. But most importantly, if we think who were the companies developing the vaccines that we all got to know very well, it was not a development coming from the big pharma corporate environment, but it was the very fast-paced, dynamic ecosystem of biotech startups being innovative and disruptive in the right timeframes in order to come up with good treatments. So, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic put the focus on this industry to the point that there's a lot of people that maybe before were not pretty sure what the word biotech meant. And now we have all these new terms in our glossary. Everyone knows what a PCR is, what an antigen is, what an antibody is. And again, that has to do with the fact that it has become more of a mainstream conversation. And therefore, there is at a global level more money being directed into the sector. So we have professionals that are highly qualified, going for an industry that it's growing. So definitely we need to consider these two first aspects before transitioning into what's going to be the third topic that I want to address, which is the challenges in identifying now members of the LGBTQI+ community as potential hires. And maybe to start here, and despite the millions of professionals, talented professionals that are out there, companies are still struggling to identify and attract them. As a recruiter, I have witnessed the hurdles that candidates face myself, from biases, discrimination, barriers, and this applies also, of course, to the scientific community. These individuals might be overlooked for promotions. Of course, we know that there are microaggressions that can be experienced in the workplace. And at the end, this all impacts, of course, that psychological safety. So all of these factors contribute to that work environment where LGBTQI professionals might be hesitant to fully express themselves. They might even hide their identities, or something that is more, let's say, actionable, not consider a job based on the gut feeling that they are getting from that particular company. And of course, there's another aspect that we need to consider here, which is intersectionality. Intersectionality of identities that I think, further makes the situation more complex. There's a figure there that I wanted to bring. If we consider just based on gender, LGBTQ+ women as opposed to men, well, they are underrepresented at every stage of the management pipeline, as you see, from an entry level up to, well, senior vice president, C-suite professionals. And needless to say, if we start adding race, ethnicity, religion, and many other factors, well, the situation, of course, gets a little bit worse. So with all this information in mind, how do we then make sure that we are tapping into that hidden pool of professionals? Well, first of all, and I would say something that it's not always done, is to make sure that the job descriptions that we are writing, the language that we are using, it's inclusive. It's not blocking that potential professional applicant to say, yes, I want to consider this job opportunity. And for that, of course, there are many ways of doing so. Today, there are several platforms and text platforms that allowed for one to run an unbiased analysis of a specific job description and then make the changes in order to make it more appealing to everyone. For all of these resources, literature that I'm mentioning, don't worry that anyone who wants to dive into the reports and get to know more about anything that I'm going to be talking in this presentation, just feel free to contact me. We'll have a Q&A session in the end, but again, happy to share these reports and links then separately. But as I was saying, first thing could be think about how we are putting the job advert out there in a way that it's inclusive and engaging to everyone. Then websites. First thing that a candidate, a professional do when considering about job change is exploring the company by checking their website. So are we making sure that those standards that we promote are being properly addressed in the website? Are they shown? Are we showing stories of current employees? Because that's what's gonna really tip into the nerve and make that individual connect with the company. Again, remember, we were talking about a talent pool that today has lots of options. So the moment that a potential applicant is not really vibing, is not really connecting with the business, well, it might be the case then that that's a lost application. But attracting the talent is just the tip of the iceberg. It has been proven that the most difficult aspect is then retaining that talent. So for the next section, I wanted to share some strategies for, well, retaining this talent. Just gonna turn Siri off. So again, what are then the strategies that we can apply after we have successfully managed to onboard LGBTQIA+ individuals as part of our workforce? Well, here, of course, there's a long list. I tried to select the ones that I think are pretty actionable in the short term. So first of all, make sure that we are running policies and practices that are in line with what's expected. And here, of course, from promoting inclusivity, respect, equality for all employees. And the way of doing that, other than stating it on a piece of paper, is to really encourage the open dialogue. Provide diversity and inclusion trainings, mostly for managers and people, of course, that are in charge of the development of the professionals, and then create those safe spaces for members of the LGBTQI community to really share their experiences, again, in a very safe way. Another important aspect is creating employee resource groups. And of course, this is something that the smaller the business might be, hard to think about this. If we're talking about a startup with 10 to 15 employees, well, of course, we're not going to have the volume and the density in order to have all these different groups. But this is something that works very well in mid-sized organizations and, of course, larger, more corporate environments. And here, these different groups, I mean, they can connect based on so many characteristics. They will provide, of course, a sense of community support, but most importantly, networking opportunities. And here, maybe a comment, because it's something that many professionals that I work with have shared. Sometimes, thanks to these groups that allow for professionals to network with other colleagues of them, maybe in different offices, in different departments, sometimes having different levels of seniority, help them to see themselves in the future, plan a career plan within the business, and then immediately, of course, that's someone that is going to be much more intrigued and willing to stay for the long term because they can connect with someone that has walked their same path within the organization. So again, as many groups as possible where people can connect and share their experience. And then in the context of groups, something that has proven also to be very valuable, it's the mentorship programs. And mentorship programs, of course, that not only have to be for new hires, entry-level professionals, but sometimes there's a need for developing a skill. And again, make sure that there are safe environments being created around these mentorship programs. And finally, as it states over there, employee benefits. And this connects with what we were saying before, that is nowadays, LGBTQI plus professionals, particularly in the biotech sector, they have more options than what they could find not even 10, but already 5 years ago. So at the moment of selecting the company, they are going to be checking, of course, what's the package behind their compensations, not only in terms of salary, but what are their benefits. So some of the benefits here that, again, have proven to be very effective when it comes to have LGBTQI individuals being interested in businesses, well, are some of the ones I stated there, from comprehensive healthcare coverage for gender affirming treatments, of course, also creating gender transition guidelines. What's the path to follow if I'm an employee of an organization, I'm considered going through this very challenging path? Well, how's my company gonna support this, or at least guide me through the process? And then another very relevant benefit is to provide support for same-sex partners. So again, these are just some ideas. In the different books that I shared before, there are much more things that can be done, but I think that this would allow for us to at least have a very first initial comprehensive way of making actions that can address the issue. So again, sort of have Siri going crazy. So yeah, I was saying, so in conclusion, for the different things that I've been mentioning so far, well, we need to prioritize definitely LGBTQI plus inclusion in the biotech sector, particularly because that's the kind of space that, to be honest, I know the most. But here, not just to support the well-being and the professional growth of that individual, but also to drive the innovation and unlock the full potential that new discoveries can have for the benefits of all us. And this is something that I think makes sense when we think about the biotech sector. We think about a very innovative and disruptive space. There has to be creativity in the air in order to come up with new ideas that will then be translated into new pharmaceutical developments that, again, can help patients at a global level. So the biotech space per se, it's quite dynamic. It's quite, again, innovative, and it's very open and very welcoming when it comes to have people with diverse way of thinking at an academic level. But it shouldn't be hard to think that we can make that translation into the biotech sector being a very good space to also try to nurture that diversity now into much more different things. Sorry, I'm having some issues with Siri. Let me try to, there we go. So again, as I was saying, the only way to maximize the impact that the workforce will have is if we also help to reach those higher levels of productivity that will come by creating safe environments that people then will feel that they belong to, can plan a career for the long term, and then invest their time and energies into whatever the values, mission, and vision of that company is. And I wanted to share with you an article that was released, I think, 3 weeks ago in Endpoint News. Because before starting to get to know people that are very actively advocating for all of these topics, I thought it was pretty much of a small group behind all these efforts that we are seeing and experiencing. But it's not just a small group. Actually, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot happening also at the very top level. Endpoint News, it's the second year that they put in place these LGBTQ plus biopharma leaders. It's a selection of couple of stories. I don't remember exactly this year how many, but you'll see all the different executives, investors, board members, all of them part of the community with very interesting background stories. But today they managed to get into a position that not only they have a voice when it comes to science, but also they have a voice when it comes to advocating for these safer environments that we've been talking. So I really recommend this last article in order to grasp what's been doing, and why not connect with these different leaders, learn from their experiences, try to see what you can apply also in your companies, regardless of your position, if you are a director, if you're a manager, of course, but also if it's your first year as an entry-level professional in a new company, go and ask what's happening. If nothing happening, well, how do I make sure that then we can at least start having these conversations? And to tie this up and finalize with what I started before, this is a job, of course, that it's going to take some time, but it's definitely going in the biotech sector in the right direction. There has been a lot of much more visibility in the last years, but again, it's not just for members of the community, but we need allies supporting this, resonating with our messages, with their stories, of course, giving the space and the platforms that we need, but most importantly, committing to making the changes that are needed. So just to finalize maybe there, advocate, educate, and take action. And this is for everyone, not only in the biotech sector, but of course in any other industry. So yeah, I think that was good with timing. I wanted to leave, oh, sorry, that's my LinkedIn profile over there. We are going to have 5 minutes of Q&A, but if anyone wants to, of course, dig deeper into any of the things that I mentioned, read some of the reports, get more stats from the different books, just write me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to come back to you. So yeah, I think that now we have a couple of minutes for Q&As. Hunter, I don't know if you
Yes, I am
there.
Here, Guillermo.
Yes.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Beautiful. Yes, we do have a question here. Someone asked, can you provide examples of biotech companies that have successfully created inclusive workplaces for LGBTQIA plus employees, and what strategies that they employ?
Yes, and I think that again, the last article that I've shared and with all these leaders that are sitting at the executive level, sorry, those are good examples. They're mostly US-based companies. So you have from early stage businesses and startups up to corporate environments, Bolt Biotherapeutics, Merck, Gilead Sciences, Pact Pharma, and there are many, many others. Again, there's a list on the article. Maybe something interesting, one of the leaders that it's featured in this article, it's Ramsey Johnson. He is the founder of a nonprofit organization called OutBio, which advocates for, again, the creation of the diverse, equal, and inclusive environments within the biotech sector. And it's a Boston-based organization that has also now a foot in the UK, in Ireland, and hopefully soon in mainland Europe. They have every month, and you can check this on their website, different networking events in order to get together, of course, all of the professionals, but most importantly, talk about topics on how to change things internally. And OutBio has a counterpart, which is Out Leadership. And again, this is the same kind of organization, a little bit closer to the investment community and for executives that are driven and committed to using the power that they have in their positions in order to advocate for the LGBTQIA+ community. I hope I answered the question.
You absolutely did. I think so. So we just have a minute left here with you, Guillermo, and you are so passionate, so driven. You've accomplished so much already. And one of our favorite questions here at Power to Fly is, if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow, interesting question. If I could go back in time and give myself a piece of advice, I would say start with this a little bit earlier in my career. I'm 31 years old, and only last year I decided to start reading about this, start talking with my colleagues, with my employers. And I think that I found it so intriguing and, of course, so rewarding that, yeah, I would say maybe if I would have started right after college during my first years of professional experience, well, now I do have walked a longer path.
Beautiful. I love it. Guillermo, please come back. This was absolutely fantastic. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope we get to see you again.
Thank you so much. Yes, likewise. Have a beautiful afternoon, everyone over there. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye now.